Well, during the course of the channel that we've actually been running for, like what is it, 5 or 6 years, that I've met some incredibly interesting people that not just I don't think that would be of interesting to me, because I have got a lot of different interests, but I've got, let me see, I've got one subscriber who is I've got 2 subscribers who are shall we say scholars of the Bible, and so if I have any questions, I can always go to them, and I go to them with different questions, and I always get an answer that's specific to the way that they look at things. So I have my friend Steve, who is an American, an extremely well-educated American, and who is able to give me a particular kind of interpretation to the Bible. Now, this is not this video, in case you're about to press next, this is not it's not a video about religion. I also have another friend, Roger, who is also a scholar of the Bible, and gives a different spin. Neither of them would be in conflict with the way that each interprets the Bible, but they give me a slightly different way of looking at things. So I value them both greatly. And I message the people that I find a common interest with. I'm very happy to actually write on a very regular basis. I am a letter writer, and this is part of my job in the channel and in our charity, is answering comments and also maintaining with those people who want that connection. I maintain communication with them. So I have my friends, my 2 biblical, I call them biblical friends, are Steve and Roger, and another man who is an incredible, well, they're all incredible people, I have to say, but John is, I call John Hardcore John. I'm sure that if he's listening to this now, he will not be upset by that, because when it comes to knowing what is happening in the world, making predictions about the way that our unelected leaders are trying to take us, he's hardcore, and I get a lot of information through links which show the reference to what he is saying. I get those as well, so I'm able to check on things myself, in the same way that I am able to verify whatever my friend Steve tells me, and he is a man of very varied interests, and also watching the global situation. So Steve, Roger, Hardcore John, and also the man that I want to talk about today, and that is Karl. And Karl is a very special person because he's had such an incredibly varied life. I thought that my life was pretty varied. I've been through a terrific number of different experiences, jobs, countries. I was in Berlin, and on my 16th birthday, I was born, it should tell you, I was born in 1939, which I sometimes refer to as 1900 and frozen to death because it's so long ago now. But I was born then, and I celebrated my 16th birthday in Berlin as a boy soldier. But that's another thing. Karl is an incredibly talented person, an extremely detail-oriented man. He's a coffin maker. Now, he writes to me, just to give you a background, because I am going to feature at least a couple of videos about Karl. Karl is if there is such a thing as a reformed alcoholic, Karl is a reformed alcoholic. By the way, I I have his permission to talk about him, because he feels that a hard-won victory over an addiction, which of course alcohol is an extremely hard addiction to overcome, because it's so socially acceptable. I tried to get this over to the kids that we had at lunch today, how something that they think of as, oh, just get a buzz on, you know, and get silly and laugh a lot and all of that. No, the alcohol is a poison, and it's connected to various health issues which can kill you. Also, if you get very heavily addicted to alcohol, I mean very heavily, as my friend Karl was, coming off it alone, cold turkey, can kill you. I was amazed to actually find that out recently. So what I'm talking about is an extremely difficult, it's a hard sell to tell people who don't feel that they have any kind of a problem, and I can only assume that they're right in their own case, and won't argue with it. But as a musician, I watched alcohol destroy people. I saw it destroy great talents in music, great players who, once they were in the clutches of alcohol, then they believed that when they'd had a few drinks that they were a better player, which is total fallacy. You're not a better anything when you're drunk. It's a fallacy. Research with people drinking, when they were researching the use of the breathalyzer and stuff like that, they had to find out what happened and have clinical research, and they were amazed and horrified to find that people who regularly drinked and didn't feel that they had a problem, when their reflexes, reaction time, and judgment skills were severely affected because they were in the middle of the grip, they believed that their faculties were totally unaffected, which was amazing. So as I was getting to know Karl, I found out some very interesting things. He has a great sense of humour. He lives in, I think, the west of England, and is something of, what can I say, is something of an outdoor person. He's very good at all the skills that are necessary to camp out, that kind of person, a survivalist, if you like. He quit working when he was in his 40s, mid-40s. I'll tell you the details of this and be more accurate when I have them in front of me. But I know that he quit life as a worker quite early. He sold up and he started to travel, and I think I'm right in saying that he travelled the world for about 12 years. And during that time, he obviously grew a love of alcohol. Well, he has a job that is unique. He makes coffins. So he is Karl the coffin maker. He has a nickname the same as my friend John, Hardcore John, has, because of what they do. And these are people that have very firm ideas on life. And Karl is one of those people, you know, we always say when you're getting worried about what people think, Karl doesn't give a stuff about what anybody thinks of him. And he's a coffin maker. Now, he's a fine coffin maker. He makes coffins for quite wealthy people, and he makes them of fine hardwoods. He does fine work. Now, He's actually, I told you that he has a great sense of humour. He has a Jack Russell dog, a terrier, that was injured in an accident and had to have one of his legs amputated, and now he never leaves Karl's side, and Karl gave him the name Tripod, which appealed to my sense of humour anyway. So Karl was telling me about his work as a coffee maker, and he earns very well as a coffee maker. He is in demand. Death never goes out of style, you know. So he's made his own coffin, and he has it in his living room, and he puts his coffee on it when he's having a coffee break. He calls it his end table, which again appeals to me. So on one particular occasion, he'd made a very fine coffin for a quite wealthy person, quite wealthy customer. Okay, so he's on his way to deliver this coffin, and his van broke down. Now, he was under a time constraint and had to be there in just like a couple of hours or so. Not because they were going to start the funeral without him, okay, but he knew that he wasn't going to be able to repair. It wasn't a roadside repair, so he had to leave his van. So he pulled the coffin out of the van and he carried it to the nearest bus stop, and he waited at the bus stop. And when the bus came along, this is so typical of a dry Englishman, which also fitted the description of the driver of the bus. The driver watched with a straight face as his next customer boarded the bus with a coffin. Now, all of the seats were taken. No, I'm sorry, I've got that wrong. So he found a seat at the front of the bus and stuck the coffin on its end and waited until he reached his destination. Now, coincidentally, the bus was loaded with elderly people, and of course they were all, as my mother would say, they were all tutting to themselves, going like this, about the man who had boarded with a coffin. Now, Karl didn't say anything at all at that, but he listened to what was being said, and all of this gossip type bantering was going on between these old people. So when his stop came, he got up and he stood there with the coffin, and he addressed the people on the bus, all of these oldies, wrinklies as we used to call them. I stopped calling them wrinklies since I became one, but he stood there at the front of the bus, and he said, "All of you who have been talking about what I do, all of you soon enough will require my services, just like the person on this coffin," implying at least that somebody was actually in the coffin, which set the old people off at a gallop. Well, he disembarked from the bus and managed to get to his delivery time and place in time, and that is typical of my friend Karl, the coffin maker. There are more stories of that, but the hardest story is one that I'll tell on my next video, and that is about Karl's battle with alcohol. Karl gave me permission to use his name, use his full name, and to tell his story. His story is a harrowing story, but at the same time, it's an incredible success story. Obviously, you would think that when stories are hard to tell, when they are full of the most horrifying hardship lessons that are being taught by whatever's being going through, whatever addiction you're trying to give up. Yes, there's something there to be confronted, but Karl beat his addiction. He has it under control, and I think he is at that point of being able to perhaps have a drink, though I'm not sure of this, because once you've been an alcoholic and you have got off the wagon, it's really tempting fate to have another drink, because even a drink will affect your judgment. Now, early on in my life as a young man, when I was in the army, when I got to about the last 2 years of my service, I did 8.5 years, but I did it as a band musician. I was in a military band. I was in several different regiments, but which is not really that important. But in the last 2 years, I was in a town called Reading, and there was a jazz club there, a club that was called the Latin Quarter, taken from a famous named club in town in London. But anyway, I think that they called that the Latin Quarter, and we used to play there for nothing. And we had a little band, and I used to have another friend who was also a trombone player, but he was civilian. So that was one where there was a lot of drinking went on. I was never very good at drinking. At the weekend, I was an amateur alcoholic at the weekend, having more than I should have, but a lot less than it takes to become really drunk. And then, of course, the young man way of talking about what a great time you had the night before because you could hardly remember what you did. But anyway, when I got out of the army, I started to study various things, various religions, and therapies, and I really got into that, and it overtook my desire to be a great musician, which as a young man I'd entertained the idea of becoming a fine player. And then things happened which made me change